What is real? Real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Open your mind.
All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh, and welcome to the Repill Project's Conversations on the Fringe. And as you see, we have the one, the only Laura Eisenhower with us. For those who don't know, Laura is a researcher, author, and astrologer. She is the great-granddaughter of President Eisenhower. She is an expert on the exopolitical situation. If you don't know what exopolitics are, that is politics dealing with everything outside of Earth and how it affects Earth. And tonight we are going to have an amazing conversation with Laura, finding out what she's been up to, what things have been going on in her life, and what new information she has. I was just talking to her saying, this is the perfect time to have her on the show. We kind of were going back and forth with having her on the show, but I'm glad we did it now because this is after the election, which was an absolute landslide, showing that Patriots are in control. And so, Laura, welcome to Conversations on the Fringe. How have you been?
Doing well. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Well, great to have you. So, we just went through 4 years of you can't tell the people, you have to show the people.
Mhm.
It's been a long ride. A lot of us were very skeptical in the sense of what was going to happen with the election of 2024. Many people are still in shock and awe. A lot of people didn't believe the election was going to happen in the first place. To begin, tell me your thoughts on the election.
Yeah, gosh, great question. And it is really wonderful to be on the other side of this. I feel way more functional. Just something really lifted, I think, for so many of us.
Yeah.
The last 4 years has just been like, when is it going to end? But I always bring it down back to, us as individuals, regardless of what shows up on the world stage, we have to take it upon ourselves to work on the energy. And I think that's what really did it. The shift is really coming from us. And I feel that the energy of the Patriots and what this administration really represents is moving into the unity, moving into, more freedom to express your greater calling with less tyranny and all this intrusion. Now, a lot of the manipulation through the false media has convinced those that are brainwashed by it that this is going to lead to concentration camps and this Plan 25, so there is a lot of uproar and a lot of conflict with all that, but we can get a little bit into it. I feel, the most important thing is that we recognize our creative energy and power. The governmental structure has had so much control over the populace with the divide and conquer strategies for so long. And I really feel there's so many that are relieved by the results, but they're not falling into the I told you so, or, like, ha, ha, ha. I mean, we have to have our moment of like diffusing from the intensity of how it's all been. But I really just feel a major bridging of those that have been really lost in the indoctrination and the programs, because a lot of people that are awakened know what that's like, have been there to some degree before and had to go through this process. And I just really feel that the energy of like healing and rehabilitation is going to be so much more present with healing centers, with, the medical industry opening itself up to holistic, naturopathic and really advanced therapies that are going to change the whole nature of everything. And it's going to show those that are freaking out right now that it's not so bad.
Yeah. I love that perspective too, because I just did a round table with Alpha Warrior, Michael Jaco, Scott McKay, Nino, and it was a lot of our discussions. But one of the things that didn't come up was your perspective. And I think that this is really, really important because there is this aspect of how our energy, our minds, our thoughts, our ability to produce and create reality had a lot to do with what just happened. And this is why we needed the masses. This is why we needed the numbers. For the longest time on this planet, we've been indoctrinated into this system that we are powerless, that we have to bow down to authority, and that authority is utilized various aspects, whether it's MK Ultra or through psychological warfare and the Mockingbird media, to keep us in a trance, to control those thoughts, those ideas, to control our creation of reality, if we want to call it that, because that's really what it is. We have this consensus reality that we create. And what we're finding, at least over the last, I would say 8 years, is this: it started really slow, and now the Great Awakening is happening faster and faster. And I think we just proved this for this last election. But now the possibilities for mankind become massive.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's huge because, you know, regardless of what people think of Trump and his character, it's nothing compared to the or the difference between, you know, Illuminati bloodline or an alter Manchurian candidate type, somebody that's being, you know, operated by dark agendas, hanging out in the background with a bunch of false movements, and like you said, the Mockingbird media, the slow grooming process that have moved through the medical industries, the educational systems, the medical industry. I think I said that twice, but all the power structures and how it's held, you know, this indoctrination in these programmings. And that's why when we see, you know, things go so political, in regards to things like gender confusion and woke left versus conservative right, I mean, I think a lot of that is going to fall away, and people are just going to be more of themselves. There's going to be a lot more freedom to just be you instead of a label and what was going on outside of you. And I think this has been the big breakthrough, and where the misunderstanding is happening with this administration that's been so smeared by the Mockingbird media, because that's what they're really afraid of. And I feel that the anomaly of you know, him coming into office and the shock that, you know, Hillary Clinton was feeling, and how they've been trying to, you know, hijack with, you know, the election fraud and the pandemic. And that was a huge wake up call. So even if a person doesn't even like Trump, the fact that they've awakened has changed the vibration, and they put somebody in the right place to be able to hold space for that emerging awakening within that individual. And they'll realize you don't have to make it about the politics. You don't have to make it about the man. Make it about your life, you know. And even if, worst case scenario, we start to see some things go a little bit sideways, not exactly the direction we want to go in, you know, the whole concept to me of awakening also is, you know, once you become sovereign and true to yourself, how can you begin to harmonize, be of service to others, begin to build community and pool our resources together so that we always have something to fall back on no matter what's happening outside of us. But no doubt has this, you know, lifted so much of the funk away of either being really held down and frustrated by the tyranny and control, and where others are fighting for it and defending their captors, you know, waving, you know, their I wouldn't even say flag, because it's not even the American flag anymore, like the pride flag, and nothing's wrong with that, but in a way where they're in this confident victimization that has been leveraged so that they glom on to these movements that, you know, they orchestrated in order to take advantage of well-intentioned souls that are really confused, that haven't dug deep. The climate change, you know, for environmental, you know, I mean, who isn't environmentally minded, you know, and just everything under the sun to target the triggers in order to empower the victim consciousness that creates this political correctness where you can't say this, you can't do this, and everything is so on edge, versus taking that wound, which the astrology shows, and turning it into wisdom and turning it into purpose, which this administration is going to hold much better space for, to where we can actually heal the very things that they've targeted without it moving through the filter of inverted media and education and medical industry.
Yeah. And you know, I'm excited because Donald Trump has made a lot of promises. And not only did he make a lot of promises, one of the things that I think he did that was key and clutch is that he made this the unity party. He made MAGA not just conservative. He made it Tulsi Gabbard. He made it Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk. We have all of these people coming in. And whatever people think about them, guys, that's your own opinion. Elon Musk is the wealthiest man in the world. It's not because he came from a family that was incredibly wealthy and made him that way. It's because he's an incredibly smart guy. He understands business probably better than anybody on the planet. And now he's going to go in and he's going to gut the U.S. federal government to a minimal, which is fantastic. But then also we have the aspect that Donald Trump's bringing back the world fairs. The world fairs in the late 19th century, early 20th century were a place for people to bring about new technological innovations. People who have their own inventions can come up and buy a booth and put it on display and show it off to the world and show people how it works. This is where Nikola Tesla really truly got his start with alternating current and his Tesla coils. So I think that these are two very big components. Then you add disclosure into that, the level of declassification that's going to come. We're going to see the JFK documents declassified. We're hopefully going to see more than just the Arrow documents, the DoD's documents on UFOs, UAPs, and extraterrestrials, and this type of stuff. Hopefully, we see the real, legitimate stuff. Hopefully, we see documents from your grandfather's time frame start getting declassified, because that's a lot of questions in people's heads. Is what was really going on then, and maybe you can jump in on that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that's why my book was so delayed, because in the last 3 years or so before it was published, I met the senior advisor to the Earth Alliance, and we've had a back and forth exchange for about 2 years before the book was put out, March of 2023, I believe it was. We're heading towards March 2025. Yeah, so it was March 2024. I'm all backwards. Anyway, my book came out in the last year, 2024. So up until the final edit, I had been talking to the senior advisor to the Earth Alliance that really, really made it clear what really happened. And it's not the Greada Treaty that was signed in 1954. He said, there's layers upon layers of false narratives. Even the most well-intentioned whistleblowers did not have access to this information, because after 1947, the levels of top secret above the president began to grow to 20 and then 28. So 1952 is when an unconditional surrender agreement under Truman took place. And that's when the UFOs flew over the Capitol. And that's when we really surrendered, right? And everybody in Congress had to sign that. And it was just basically something that ended up being hidden. And what they did was they created false narratives in order to scapegoat or put the blame on individuals that were responsible for, any kind of, enslavement or abduction scenario or technology trade with ETs. And they placed that on my great grandfather. So when I was born, I knew, I was getting downloads, and it was immediate, okay, let's get to work, and I'm like, oh, I can't talk to anybody about this. So I was living a double life. I had been recruited to go off planet. And that was actually because my great grandfather was briefed that a descendant would come in and blow the lid off of things that were taking place in his administration. And once he found out, they targeted me before I was born. They've been targeting a lot of individuals. And I'm sure you felt a lot of this as well, being the kind of soul that you are, doing the work that you're doing, where a migration of souls would come in that, not all at once, but throughout time, right? And we would just be that much more determined to live our mission, to speak truth, to be sovereign, to rebel against tyrannical authority, to not maybe know what exactly we're doing, but we're following our internal guidance, and we're not going to, step back and consent. Now we're, uncovering all the roots and the different pieces and layers, and seeing, what should remain and what should be tossed. So what I have come to discover is, because of that unconditional surrender agreement in 1952, he began to work closely with Val Thor. He set up the White Hats, the Earth Alliance, the USMC Special Section. And in 1954, instead of signing a treaty with the Greys, which MJ-12 did behind his back, he ordered an invasion on the Dulce underground base to take out the Greys, which was about a decade earlier than the one we hear about in 1969 that Phil Schneider talks about. So a lot of this was very, quiet. Even the first contact about the Nordics isn't exactly what we would hear. Val Thor supposedly warned about the Nordics and the Greys. So I put that all in my book, but I put everything else I've learned in my book, because my hope is that the reader will find neutrality as they read it with an open mind and really take what resonates and leave the rest, right? It's not about like trying to push something or this is what happened and you can just discard everything else. But it's like, well, what makes sense? Because once you hear this, maybe some other dots are going to connect that really validate why this is true. Because it did for me, and maybe it will, for you as well. But I'm not attached to what other people think, because truth stands on its own. Whether you believe it or not, it's still solid. So I can only have faith that that's as close to the truth as I can get. But if it's not, I have an open mind to be corrected. But this is all after I did a lot of research and I was sharing a lot in presentations about, all right, if he did sign a treaty in 1954, there's got to be more to the story, right? But this is what I heard. Here are the whistleblowers. This is their testimony. But this is what I've heard also about technology exchanges taking place in the 40s under Roosevelt, with him not participating, Roosevelt that is, but Crowley, Churchill, and Hitler. And then things that Phil Schneider talks about in the 1930s. Keylontic Science, energeticsynthesis.com with Lisa Renee, contactees and experiencers, whistleblowers that have been in secret space programs. All that research and all that information, it's like, okay, now this new information coming in, now it makes sense. Now, like, all the question marks are beginning to dissolve. And yes, it makes Eisenhower much more of a benevolent being than somebody who was just duped or fooled. So sure, that's better, but I'm here for truth. So it didn't matter anyway. And so it's wonderful because there's always been a connection with Trump and, Kennedy being briefed by Eisenhower, and the sort of baton being passed, even before Eisenhower, being passed to him, of benevolent leaders that are really in service to humanity, that are not a part of the inverted cabal. And those that have been in it, Kennedy family, that, there are many that came in order to turn that around. And we see that to this day of, a lot of people talking about their experiences, what they went through in those families. And I don't know the Kennedys well enough to speak on that, just knowing that it's like in the list of families, there's no way to project or assume anything until you sit down directly and talk to them. And so I don't want to speak on that, but all I know is the trajectory really began to change. The reason the assassination, took place and why the Kennedys have had such a hard time is because when you begin to break those oaths, when you begin to change things around, when you begin to move in a different direction, that is probably the most threatening thing that you can do. And I know that Eisenhower had something to do with that. I grew up in this family, so there was no bloodline, like, ritual stuff or MK Ultra. I was targeted, but it wasn't within the family. It was because he was briefed and told that somebody would, come into the family to blow the lid off this, which I'm doing along with many, many people as we're trying to get to the truth. So, I don't want to speak too much about the Kennedys, but he spent a lot of time with JFK, briefing him. And then you see just, the trajectory of, the family line and the extraordinary things that have taken place there, the Trump connection with, John
Trump, Tesla.
Yeah. And just all of this. And it's like, wow, I feel like this is going to be a huge part of, disclosure. And if it's not, I'm definitely, like a lot of people, just going to be watching, what are you steering? Because I'm seeing still a lot of videos being put out saying that my great-grandfather Eisenhower signed treaties with the Greys. And there are way too many, sources that have said MJ-12 did it behind his back. And it makes sense because in 1952, if there was an unconditional surrender agreement, which Dan Cooper says, not William Cooper from Hold a Pale Horse, not related, he says that that surrender agreement said that the ET technology exchanges would take place with MJ-12, that it was handed over to them. And then we see the three-letter organizations, the Bilderberg, all the different secret societies, MJ-12, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and all the members of this shadow government that's been expanding and growing into a position of really the ones making the decisions. After Kennedy, we see that the position of the presidency has been very much about the grooming and the three-letter organizations creating that person that's going to be in those leadership positions, and the MK Ultra projects that have placed these individuals that are running altars in many, many influential positions in Hollywood, in politics, in every sector of our society, to steer the narratives. And like you said, Mockingbird Media is just a way to empower these individuals and run, a biasness in order to support them while trashing everybody else. And that's why the false narratives have really made Eisenhower look bad, because he was somebody that, along with many, we're putting the right things in place. So
Right.
if you can cover that up and point fingers at him, then how are we ever going to get to the truth? What, listening to somebody a lot of people think is crazy? That's not an easy one. So I hope, you know, a lot of this information doesn't just come from me about his relationship with Val Thor and, you know, just understanding the roots of the white hats. And before him, you know, how that, you know, was building, you know, since 1776, you have your shirt, and, you know, times even previous to that. Because we know what's happened to the United States, like a long time ago. We have been dealing with the interplanetary corporate conglomerate and the ICC alliance connected to the Dracos for a lot longer than, you know, people realize. So in breaking free of this mind control and grooming, we're actually starving the parasitic inverted system that relies on our creative channels being infected by what we're receiving, you know, in order to even exist. So breaking free of that alone is enough to not even worry about what's happening on the world stage. That's winning the war within yourself on the war on consciousness. And that's a huge step. And then you'll start to see things validate why so many of us are excited about Trump.
Now, let me ask you this. So we're getting to that point where we're breaking free from this energetic bond, right? We can go into the idea for everybody out there in the audience who's listening that the ultimate agenda is to control the life force energy. This is what higher civilizations, beings of higher ascended points, this is what they thrive off of when they are in those demonic or evil realms. They thrive off of that life force energy. They thrive off of that fear, that emotion. That is a fuel. Just like for anybody out there who knows what I'm talking about, biophotons, orgone energy, chi, prana, any way you want to look at it, it has a very, very real significance, and you can harness it. You can increase and decrease it with the emotional significance. So this is, in a sense, an energy source, a fueling source for various types of civilizations, especially more advanced ones. So for everybody out there, we're breaking free from that psychic bond. We're breaking free from that energetic bond. This was the agenda, is to control populations and planets. Go back to Jupiter Ascending. If you've ever seen the movie, how they harvest mankind and they utilize it for their longevity, for them to live hundreds of thousands of years. Well, it's the same idea, except that they're not harvesting the physical bodies of humanity. They're harvesting the life force energy of humanity to elongate their life, give them more power, just like how it works in all the Marvel comic books and everything like that. So we're breaking free from this. So Laura, I got to ask you, do we think that there is going to be some retaliation? Do we think that since we are breaking the psychic bond, it's all being revealed, we have these Illuminati bloodlines being exposed and really being eliminated, annihilated to a large degree on this planet, the controllers, the lords that were left to overrule humanity, they're being systematically destroyed. So do we see in the near future something happening, someone coming down and saying, hey, I got to take back control? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like it's really, there's not a whole lot left that they can do. I mean, I feel that the remnants of the degree of brainwashing, indoctrination, and infection of the creative energy of individuals that have got caught in the net of the mainstream media, the Mockingbird media, the indoctrinated aspects, or the indoctrination that's taken place in universities and in schools, the sex changes that young children have had, the gender confusion. I mean, there is a lot to rehabilitate and heal, and it's going to be really, really hard to help these people if they are throwing labels or in that divide and conquer of, oh, well, if you're raising a flag or even showing any support for this person, therefore you're racist, therefore, you know, you're out to, destroy democracy. That's what they've been taught. So I feel like there's a massive detoxing that is just as severe as somebody coming off of heroin, like a withdrawal that is going to be so extreme in the people. As far as the beings and entities, I mean, they're vampiric. They can only imitate and steal. So the powers that be are the powers that stole, and everything based in the dark technology is to harness and leverage the vibration that they've already dropped us into based on how we perceive what's coming through the news and how much we've lost our sovereignty and our creative energy to the programs and indoctrination and the grooming and all that. I know I'm using the same words over and over, but for lack of, being able to come up with another way to say it. So the vampiric forces compromise their DNA on purpose. They lost their direct connect with source. So they messed with the planetary grid network, put it in reversal grid spins with the Nephilim reversal grid and the Niberian diotic crystal grid technologies that basically turn the dodecahedron ether into a reversal, which is symbolic of the inverted pentagram. So with this ascension window, with the Venus transits correcting that, and with the sun moving through the 13th sign of Fiacus, which is ruled by ether, all of this has been corrected. So a lot have already left. Eisenhower, with the help of Valthor, appealed to the Guardians to put an outer barrier around the planet to keep them from being able to leave and to keep any more from coming in. This is what I've heard, and it makes sense to other whistleblowers and SSP people. Some have been compromised since they shared this. So I can only take what resonates and leave the rest based in some new information and other sources. So again, why it makes sense is because the underground bases have been being cleared out. Not maybe to the degree that we hear, like, oh, they're all gone. It's all like they've all been cleared. Like I doubt that. I know, people that are still, a part of these operations, but there really is different parts of the timeline that we experience. We can't really say for sure. It really depends on where we're at. So that's a whole nother conversation. But so I feel it's the humans and their response to, all of this shattering. Like they don't have the parasite feeding on the host, but it became a dependency bond in the same way that you stay with an abusive partner. You make excuses for them. You don't want to see that the way that they're talking to you and treating you is actually undermining you, your self-worth, and your ability to, be a strong and creative person. It goes way, way back to all the programming that's been passed down generation to generation, patriarchal programs, sexual misery programs, all these things that have kept people in toxic relationships that so many are waking up from, right? And it's no different on a macro level of divorcing ourselves from an inverted system that's abusive, but it acts like it cares about us. But, you see red flags, you ignore them, you defend it. You don't want to see it because you've invested in it. It's as shocking and as traumatic as somebody who's been super loyal to a marriage and then finally has to break up or finally has to see the deception, the lies, the trickery, the abusiveness. Now, so many people are well aware and they're like, I'm done. And so many are like, no, I can't let it go. And others are like, wow, the only other alternative is somebody way worse. And this is as best as we can do. So there's so many different levels of, cutting the cords and breaking up with this inversion. And people think that they have to cut the cords and then gravitate to Trump or gravitate to a political party or gravitate to something else that they refuse. If they could just see it's not about that. What we're happy about is because we know that there's more air to breathe. There's more sovereignty to be gained. There's more missions, like you said, to be accounted for so that, all the leaders can stand up so that we can be a unified field and a team, not just like the governmental structure, because that's collapsing. That has been collapsing. So, however much they, continue to hold on to it, we don't have to hold on to it with them because, everything is reliant on us and calling our power back. So, everything's great as far as being excited about this administration, but I think a lot of us, aren't going to fully give our power away. We know better, but we're encouraged because of what we've heard, what we've seen. So I feel that the detox response and the withdrawal response and the fear of like, what does that mean now that the dependency bond is being broken? It's not in your face anymore. The news is going to change. The newscasters are going to change. Everything's going to slowly begin to morph into more honesty and more truth, and greater support. That there has to be a bridging, of those that like are really just helping, out of love, out of compassion for those individuals to be able to process through this without making it political, without, putting it in their face. And I think a lot of people have that calling and other people don't. They need to stay on this line. They need to express it. So I think, as long as we're true to ourselves, we're in the right position to do our role. And each of us has a unique role. And the more we're true to it, the more it can come together. The more we're operating under a control mechanism or a fear response, the more it might be somewhat delayed, but that's a part of the healing process. So I think, the detox response, the breakdown of that energy, the ones that feel the most lost because they're still believing in it are going to have the hardest time. The ones that recognize it now will have an open mind to see the positive changes without the MSM, infecting them to completely retaliate and knock it down and say, oh, that's crazy. So the proof is in pudding, right? So the actions will reveal themselves. It's sort of like, you know, if you pick up a stray dog, you know, at first it's going to be scared of you, you know, it doesn't know what to expect. But when you see the love, when you see the change, that is when those souls are going to start to feel safe and comfortable again. And that's when I think they're going to heal. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, it's going to take months, if not years, to begin to see, you know, what this administration is about, and to remember that those individuals, and a lot of individuals, should not make it about that administration, because look at all the healers, look at all the people that are doing work on a ground level, that have already, you know, begun. You know, there's a lot of programming that would just call that new age woo. You know, it's just people got to drop the labels and live in their heart. That's essentially soul centered, right?
Yeah, there's a few things that you said there that really hit home. Number one is Donald Trump was talking about, you know, when I win this election, then we're going to have Liberation Day. And you just kind of gave a whole new perspective and meaning into it for everybody out there, and realizing that that victory kind of signified that disconnection, that cutting off from this deep state, from the global cabal. That, I mean, even Yuval Noah Harari said, you know, it's, hey, look, if Donald Trump wins, that's the death to the New World Order. Now you have Putin and Elon Musk going out there overthrowing a Seclorium, right? We are seeing the systematic destruction of the old guard and the birth of the new guard. We have a new world order of the ages that is coming into play. And I mean, I don't look at their words as something negative in the sense of that. I think that what is being built right now is liberating. It is sovereign nations coming together for the betterment of humanity and working together to achieve this progression into the future, spiritually, physically, and socially and culturally. And so I think that when Donald Trump signified that we're heading into liberation, is you really nailed it right there. Is that really what happened? Is we've liberated ourselves from this ritualistic abuse that has been perpetuated on the mankind for millennia. And that as people begin to sense their own freedom, begin to trust more in the world around them, that's when the healing is truly going to begin and start to happen. And with a lot of these people that are indoctrinated or the victims of the mainstream media or left radicalism, in 2 years down the road, when they see that Trump isn't Hitler, when they see that Nazism isn't taken over or fascism isn't taken over, and their lives are progressively better, that there's new technologies being come out there, there's new discoveries happening, science is actually allowed to progress in the way that it was meant to progress, and that humanity is united, there's no wars around the world, people are going to see that, oh shit, I was lied to. It was them that was the perpetuator. And this is where the real healing begins.
So well put. Yeah, that's exactly what you said, so much more simply than I was trying to get at. Exactly. And right. It's just going to take a little while. And until then, there's a major trauma response. And in this critical time that's very fragile, yeah, there could be a lot of backlash. And it's almost like the leaders don't even have to do anything, because the individuals have already been infected, and the frequencies that are coming from 5G could really, you know, begin to switch on something that the nanoparticles in the body that have been inhaled, that have been in the food, that have been in the, you know what, could really turn some individuals like really off in a very, you know, kind of scary way. But in this shift of power, are these individuals going to have the ability to switch those things on and use weather weapons and things like that? And I think what made this election a lot easier than people thought, and why it was a little bit unpredictable, I think that when the North Carolina hurricane hit, the Helene, that also hit other states, Tennessee and I think Georgia, and you know, more than just North Carolina, of course, Florida, and then Milton. When Milton came around, it went from category 6 down to like a 3 or a 2. And I think people started to realize that when they were blindsided by a massive weather event, you know, like especially North Carolina in the location it was, everybody got together, started to meditate. Everybody got together when they heard about Milton and said, we have the power to shift this. We have the power to dismantle these dark weapons. We're elemental beings, and our focused intent can change everything. And the danger is when we're on autopilot, because the Saturn moon matrix and the rings of Saturn, the artificial reality, people being like really dumbed down, meaning their dormant DNA is not switched on. They're literally conduits and products of what's coming from outside of them into them. So the rest of our dormant DNA and the brain, the parts of our brain that we're not using, the creative energy that they've siphoned and stolen, is a part of the weaponry. Artificial timelines require the energy that they harvest for them to even work. So I think, after that hurricane, when everybody got together and they saw we can change the nature of this storm, and it worked, I feel they expected it to be a whole hell of a lot worse. And that might have been what interrupted the election. And the fact that that storm settled down and the damage wasn't as bad as I think they hoped it were to be. And the power of the human spirit is just so incredibly strong that, this grace and ease and flow of the election fell into place. And I really feel that was a part of the awakening of, wait a second, we're elemental. We are powerful creators. We can change the direction of the storm, and we can mellow the storm out. And it's sort of like, we don't have to have a new world order because, and enough people, like you said, enough people, have awoken to that. And, Trump is a great catalyst, but think of all the people that are in other countries that don't even think about the administration, that don't even know what to think. It's that simple ability to begin to create, not be on autopilot, and take charge of your words, of your thoughts, of your intent, and to be the override frequency, because everything about the dark technologies needs to drop us into a lower vibration for the dark tech to even work. That's why they don't just use the weapons. They require us to bite into the bait so that our vibration is hospitable to intrusion and AI infiltration. Of course, there's positive AI. So I feel like that was a really critical point where, the creative energy got really lit up because of that disaster. Sometimes that's what it takes, a traumatic event to switch on and just be like, all right, we need to step up. We're not going to allow this to happen again. So, yeah. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Give me your perspective then. On the aspect of AI and what that is currently in our world.
Well, I feel, there's AI that's harvesting, that basically, takes energy. And then there's AI that is complementary to the energy that we already are. And as long as we stay in command of it versus it commanding us, then we can work with it, right? We're learning, we've learned a lot in our many, many lifetimes. The fall of Atlantis, different cataclysms, a lot of different events that have taken place throughout galactic history that people have memories of. AI is nothing new. So I think, those that are working, with AI, that are benevolent, that are responsible, that are using it for the right reasons, especially, to help in the medical, to assist with, things that would otherwise be kind of difficult, as a way for us to begin to move into our avatar consciousness, our Merkaba body. It's not going to happen overnight. So, something that, can help us connect with that, because we're the most advanced technology, something that we can work with that is activating to us, that is in harmony with our DNA, is in harmony with frequency shifting, so that the epigenetics is healthy enough to turn on the positive, more advanced aspects of us instead of the things that keep us in dis-ease, that kind of thing. So there's an AI component, right? But then there's like vampiric AI, connected more to the Draco, more vampiric races, service to self, where they use that technology, to, override. And we see that in the music industry. We see that online with algorithms and just, some harvesting methods that come through AI. So assimilation into AI would be, losing the soul matrix and being bioengineered into a form that later has to abduct to get its genetic material to make up for the fact that it lost its reproductive abilities and its emotions. That's negative, AI. But I feel that responsible people that are moving through the great initiations that the cosmic alignments hold to heal its own planetary system, that when we're in alignment with that, and we're in a place of discernment and responsibility, and we are, guardians of nature and of the future generations, and we're doing the inner work, the spiritual development and the technological will work together in an integrated way, versus what happened in Atlantis when the technology took over. So we're at a critical bifurcation point, revisiting things that we've already gone through in history. And I feel enough of us on the planet right now have enough of a clue to keep it from being steered in that direction. And again, if we had Kamala, even if we have an awakening humanity, say she did win, that would have collapsed somehow. Like it would have not lasted. I mean, we have to figure that, we've had this from the get-go, that it was inevitable that and if not, there's certain souls that would move on, and some, maybe on a more mass population would be entangled. But I feel that whole Earth is a part of this, and the whole of humanity now. And yes, and that AI will be used responsibly. It won't take over. And that if Elon Musk wants to put chips in people's head, that you have the right to say no. And let's just, yeah.
So give me your thoughts then, because we are coming into this critical juncture, this bridging, as you call it, of change, of the future. So what is your thoughts on moving towards 2030 and 2050? Because we know that the global elitists, the Illuminati bloodlines, they had various different thoughts of where humanity would be before 2030 and 2050. And obviously we've altered this timeline. So what are your thoughts on where we're headed 2030, 2050?
Yeah, this is great. Well, Agenda 25, there's Plan 25 and Agenda, 30 or whatever, the New World Order agenda versus, what they're trying to project upon or put upon the Trump administration. So people think that's, the dark agenda. And the other one represents freedom. So, that level of trickery is, falling to the wayside. So I feel that there's definitely going to be accountability. And what I've already heard and what's been happening even before this election was that certain people in prominent positions were given a choice, and that if they don't come clean and they don't begin to change their ways, and if they don't stop doing what they're doing, their reputation will be destroyed. If they are, able to, admit and stop and deal with some of the ramifications of it, their reputation will be somewhat protected with some kind of news story saying that they died or that they disappeared, or they, or they'll have like a CGI version. But in actual fact, behind the scenes, that person's being dealt with. Some say executed, some say taken, someplace else. I hope all souls will be rehabilitated, to cast out the ones that don't want to be. Because when you look at, the individuals that have come from the SSP, MK Ultra, SRA, Satanic Ritual Abuse, and some of these families, there are a lot of individuals a part of that and that have been influenced by them, that want to be free, that require our awakening to be set free, but are afraid of us. They've been blackmailed, they've been abused, they've been traumatized. So, I mean, we have to look at that and have that kind of compassion in how divine justice is brought about, I feel. And then those that don't want to change, that are the handlers or dark lords or the perpetuators or the ones that can't come clean or cannot stop this and do not want to, come to the light, that, they'll be dealt with accordingly. But I think there's going to be way more numbers of individuals that are willing to rehabilitate, that have been caught in this loop and in this enslavement with these families, that yes, maybe they have fame, maybe they have a ton of money, they live in mansions, but they're, they've been abused as children, they've been trafficked. I mean, they're running these altars, they're not even in possession of themselves. I mean, there needs to be major rehabilitation of these souls that are willing, to begin to work with that, and take the leadership of folks like Kathy O'Brien and other people in the SSP, and those that have been blackmailed, to say, look, I was drugged, I was filmed, I got to come clean, and not be afraid of us. So we have to be a very understanding humanity, and not just look at it like black and white, like, oh, that's the enemy, and here we are over here. We need to, look at the rehabilitation of these souls that have been caught and trapped and blackmailed, who sold their soul like at a young age to Hollywood, and really help them get themselves back and to really truly rehabilitate and to, obviously have centers and all sorts of locations and resources for children that are being pulled out of this to recover and to be safe, and all these 3-letter organizations in the foster care, to be transformed and accounted for, so that these children aren't being trafficked. Like, there's going to have to be like the real deal service to humanity, not corrupt cops, not people that have been paid off. I mean, it's going to be a huge, huge cleansing. So I see that 2030, 2050, we're going to have made a lot of headway, and that a lot of individuals that have played the dark role, a huge portion of them are going to be on the rehabilitation journey. And the ones that aren't are going to be the ones that are absolutely and totally removed if they haven't been already.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on what's going to happen in the next year in the sense of the disclosure? November 17th, we got a congressional hearing on the UAP phenomena. You have former Rear Admiral Gollette that's going to be talking. You have David Grush and then two unnamed people. One of them, many believe, is the Black Project's whistleblower who came forth to Michael Schellenberger. He was an intelligence analyst who was reviewing all of the SAPs and CAP programs, who saw a lot of what the government was doing in projects and has information. I know this because I had a congressional staffer, friend of mine, a few different people who were in on these conversations, and they gave us this information, what was in the classified briefings. And this guy that is currently supposedly coming out with Michael Schellenberger was in those briefings in 2023. He was the one guy that David Grush was covering for. David Grush was secondhand proxy, and he knows the location. He has the place where these things are, which means that we have the tech. We have the tech that's reverse engineered. And what he's talking about is a reverse engineered tech that we've gotten over the last 30, 40 years. He knows the location. He can point Congress in the direction. And the idea is that this hearing is happening November 17th, and then Donald Trump comes in January 25th. And we know he is going to make some type of movement for disclosure. He tried to do it in 2020 before he left. Do you think that this tech is going to start coming out of these projects? If so, what are your thoughts on that tech being utilized for energy production, free energy, propulsion, and then also the medical aspect of, in the sense of frequency healing, Rife machines, this idea?
Totally. All that's going to, be coming back. And actually Eisenhower in his administration talked to some star beings, worked with some star beings that were shut down by a lot of other, world leaders, to, really bring this in and make it available. So there's a lot of these individuals that have come into the human form that are extraterrestrial, right? That have taken on a human form, that have this knowledge, that know how to, invent these things, people that have been in these projects and programs that know these things exist, that are a part of, the exposure. Because everything, as long as we don't know about it, we can't get our hands on it, and we might not even believe it's really there. So I feel there's a massive, shift going on because of this. And it's going to open the doorway to a lot more disclosure, a lot more conversation, because, there's stuff I'm bringing, to the table that people might not talk about, and vice versa. And amongst, everybody there, that this might be the first time that they're starting to connect dots. I mean, I think that this is something that's going to snowball. It's going to continue to grow. These technologies are already here, but they need to be more available, and the right people be guardian to them, so they're not misused, so they're not and that's what's changing is these technologies have been used in SSP programs. And think about like the mind control. If you can turn a perfectly benevolent person into an assassin, think of what you can do to a criminally minded person to turn them around. Right. And we can actually utilize some of the ways that they've turned humanity dark and criminal, and maybe use something similar in order to bring them back. And I would say frequency, sound, and of course, all the people that you're mentioning, and Tesla and Rife, and it's all out there. So I feel that is going to be way more available. This is just the beginning. There's been a lot of disclosure already just amongst us, but this is going to be available finally to the public. And I feel it's going to accelerate the healing process of so much trauma that is carried in the collective, because there's the trauma of just what we experience in this life. Think about the galactic trauma. We don't learn about it in school. We have rewritten history. So as a collective, we've never even attempted to heal on the level that we're going to when we see what's been going on behind the scenes, when we learn our galactic history in school, when we, realize that, when we go to the doctor, we can work with frequency. We can get to the root of an ancestral pattern or a traumatic lifetime instead of just drugging our children. So the minute, like before I even knew he won, I'm like, he must have, I could just feel like a lot of this coming through, and just, oh my gosh, and so this is great. And what I love too is if Trump hadn't won and this meeting were to take place, how much they would try and close this, keep it from the public, project upon it, smear it. And now it's going to be very, very hard for them to get away with it without being completely wiped off the map, whether it's they're fired, whether there's a way to, fully and totally, counteract it in a way that is really going to reach people. And the thing is, it might not come from Trump. It might be coming from somebody that he hires, that'll be a little bit more digestible and a little bit more acceptable to the ones that are freaking out right now, because they're the ones that need the most help.
100%. And so I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think we are on the verge of something absolutely massive, beautiful, and epic. I think that what we're about to see over the next 4 years is going to be healing. And you mentioned when you heard that Donald Trump won, or before you even heard, you felt it. And that's one thing I've been talking about the last few days, is it was almost like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. I just feel so relieved. And not only that, is there's a lot of things that I'm going through in my own personal life. I know we all are. And, you get down on yourself and you just don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. But now all of a sudden it was just like, whoa, I got all this shit to do. I got things to do now. And like, you get a better outlook on life.
That was it. I'm like, I'm going to go vacuum the whole house and like put away my clothes finally. It's been 4 years. Like,
I know, right?
He's just been gathering dust. And I've just been like, I mean, seriously, in more of a funk than I've ever been. And I know that, that's not the way to go. I mean, it's all about the inner work, and I have done, the inner work, whatever. But when that lifted, it was just the inspiration returned, and not like it was fully gone. I've stuck doing what I do. But I really agree with you. It's just the exhaustion of having, to deal with the people that are falling for this, or just the heartbreak of feeling like no matter what you say, people aren't going to listen. And if, if somebody like this is in office again, how much longer is it going to be? It's just to feel like we're on the right trajectory, to me, just activates even further why we came here and what we're here to do. Whereas before, we're still doing it with a major, weight upon us that is censoring us, is silencing us, is smearing us. And I just feel like, breath of fresh air for sure. And then when I realized I'm like, even if I had no idea who these individuals were, we're very psychic and tuned in, right? Our body, does kinesiology, it muscle tests, it knows like an animal does, like if there's danger and if something's safe, so this is where people have to tune in and get a digital detox to really feel the energy, and it's just, so that's what I didn't have to be turned around about Trump, when Hillary was running. It was immediate. It's like, oh yeah, if I'm going to be picky, he's not like, somebody I'd want to date or his kind of personality. But it's like, come on. I don't know, the vibration and just
he was the right man for the job to create this movement, which latched on to all these other. I mean, I've always looked at this. This is quite interesting because you were already involved with a lot of these movements prior to Trump ever coming up. I mean, you were with Gaia, you were in a lot of these other circles.
I was with Gaia, but like a lot of other stuff. Yeah.
Right. You're in a lot of these other circles, and you have these movements that were all kind of separated. There is not one convergence of all of these movements.
And that's what really bugged me.
Right. And then Q came around, right? And Trump and all this stuff came around. And all of a sudden, all these movements started kind of coalescing and coming together in this convergence form to the point where we are today. And, I look at MAGA as kind of not a political movement, but more of a spiritual movement. We all understood that, hey, at some point in time, we got to unite, we got to come together, and we got to do what's right. And, we look at MAGA, and it's highly diversified in the sense of the perspectives and the beliefs of all the various different people. I mean, MAGA is not Christian for anybody out there. It's Christian. It's pantheist. It's all these other different aspects of spirituality and truth. And primarily, it is truth. It is about truth. It is about uncovering what has happened to our civilization, over the last millennia. And the beautiful thing is that's all coming out right now. So it's going to be absolutely epic, absolutely amazing. Laura, I want to know, go ahead. But I want to know, what do you have going on? What do you have coming up?
Oh yeah. Awesome. Well, I definitely think, it's about having the freedom to choose, and not be told that you can't do something when it comes to your health. We have every right to be in our, medical sovereignty, and not tyranny. And I've been around for a while, and I'm not into cliques or groups. I love everybody, you know, and those that are dangerous, I have a boundary to. I just want to see the good in every being, you know, rise. So yeah, I mean, there's been polarization and then coming together, and I feel like in the things that have polarized, there has been, like you said, this convergence of individuals that just want the same thing, that aren't all caught up in this narrative or this belief system or this person to follow and giving all their power away. Cause that's old paradigm that's disguised with the lingo of disclosure and ascension. And I just feel like, you know, that has fallen while something has really risen that is beyond all of this. It isn't about the labels. Like you said, it doesn't have to be Christian. But the thing is that we all have the spiritual virtues of compassion, integrity, love, and wanting to heal, wanting to rehabilitate. And that's what's taking over. And to me, that is the MAGA. And if people can just do that for themselves and let go of whatever it is that's disturbing them and not allow, you know, anything outside of you to cause you to split off indefinitely or in a toxic way from friends and family, then you have really claimed some victory, because that is what they've targeted, you know, sacred union relationships, the family unit, friendships. And the thing is, even if those things do fall to the wayside, you can still love from afar. You can still send love telepathically. The most important thing is that we don't let that aspect succeed. And if we can override that, regardless of what our belief system is, we're doing great. So what do I have coming up? I have a cruise, which is going to be pretty wild. And that's December 13th to December 21st. It Belize in Honduras. It's with a bunch of other speakers like the Hertogs and Jerry Sargent and Debbie Dashinger. And it's with Portal to Ascension, Neil Gar. And I know there's a lot more people I didn't name. That's on my website, cosmicgaia.org. I'm starting a new platform. And it was really because of all the censorship, but maybe I don't need to now. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, you can find me on cosmicgaia.org. I've got events coming up, but what I do is I hold like a safe container to do mini readings. I'm an astrologer and I focus on health, you know, medical astrology. It's really amazing how the planets are connected to our organs, our circulatory system, our endocrine system. And it's really about like breaking the negative patterning and realizing our, you know, greater potential that they constantly hijack with psyops and false flags because they understand the occult knowledge of things like astrology. So I'm very connecting to higher self and the highest of intention to be in service to the greatest good in you and that of humanity when I do readings. And you can just find that on my website. And I just really love talking to you. It's just so wonderful to just connect with you.
You as well, Laura. And I'm going to have you back on here, and we're going to have to talk about so much more because everything is about to unfold right in front of us. So it's going to be absolutely epic. I will hit you up and we're going to definitely have you back on here. And hopefully maybe before the end of the year, we'll see how fast things actually go. Guys, go out and, that's the wrong one. Go out and visit Laura at cosmicgaia.org. That's COSMICGAIA.org for the people that are out there listening on the audio version of the podcast, or x.com, Eisenhower 8. That is EISENHOWE 8, the number 8, at x.com. Laura, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate you so much, love. You have a great evening, and we'll see you all next time. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.
Boone, that's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.